The only way I can compare this is we all know what a modern day park and ride is, right? Nobody knows who owns it, but we all go there, we park our cars and we leave. And, that's a benefit to us. It's when we're traveling, it's when we're moving. And so during this time, they would have had something similar to that. They would have had a sheepfold that looked, like the picture I had earlier. And basically the purpose of that was in the countryside, there would be different shepherds traveling and there would be sheepfolds scattered throughout so they could rest on their journey. And so as people were coming through, shepherds would be bringing their sheep and they'd be throwing them into the sheepfold. And over time, you would get maybe 3, 4, 5 different shepherds and their sheep in this, the actual sheepfold. And so I'm thinking, man, they're all white, fuzzy, and bleak. Like, how the heck are you going to find your sheep in that sheepfold when they're all mixed? And it actually had nothing to do with the shepherd. Each shepherd, when they would come and call for their sheep, only their sheep would respond. Only their sheep would actually respond to their voice. In fact, the other sheep, they would actually run away, indicating that they know the shepherd's voice. They know who their shepherd is. And so what I would offer this morning is actually the greatest weakness of a sheep is its greatest asset or greatest strength. David mentioned it last week. Sheep are not very intelligent. They're not smart animals. But yes, they may be dumb, they may be stupid, they may be totally, unself-sufficient, but man, are they dependent. They are totally dependent on the shepherd. And so what's weak about the sheep is actually its greatest asset. It only listens to its shepherd's voice. There is no other voice that it'll listen to. And I want to let us into a story. It was about my first 6 months in ministry, so this is a few years ago. And I remember being in this season where I wasn't having a lot of fun. And if I was being honest with you, I was getting tired of being a sheep. I was really tired of living a life like this where everything was at my fingertips. And I felt like I had to live my life like this. Like, all right, God, every day I wake up, I don't know what's next. I don't know if I'll have food on the table, but I've given my life to you. So, if I was honest with you, that got weary. I got tired of living that way. And I remember my first 6 months of ministry, I came home from a student ministry night. And by the way, there was nothing wrong with the church I was at. Awesome church, awesome leadership. Everything that was going on was internal. I came home, I looked at Mariah, I said, I have no question that God has called me to ministry, but I wish he hadn't. I wish he hadn't. I don't like doing this. And what I felt in that moment was I felt like a complete slave. I felt like God was just this guy looking down and saying, yep, I got you. I get a vision of the guy with the hook. You got to be quicker than that. It's just like, I felt like that. I felt like everything was out of reach. I felt like I didn't want to really do this, but God called me to it. And if I was honest with you, as I was going through that season, I was seeking for freedom. I was looking for it. I was looking for freedom, but I wasn't looking in the right places. And I remember feeling insecure in a lot of different ways and feeling like I was living in a glass house, and I was just like, man, I just want something else. And so I remember I was like, well, maybe I can, create security in me. And so I was like trying to start different businesses that I knew nothing about. So for those of you in marketing, I was like your perfect target. So on Facebook, those things that say, hey, in 3 easy steps, you'll be a millionaire. That was me. I clicked on all of them. I clicked on all of those ads. And what I was trying to do was, I was like, well, maybe there's a plan B. If this ministry thing doesn't work out, I'd like to have a second option. I'd like to create my own level of security. And I wouldn't say this at that time, but really what I was doing was, I was tired of being a sheep. What I wanted to be was God. Self-sufficient, not dependent on anyone or anything. Free, without need. I wouldn't have said that at that time, but that's really deep down. I was tired of being a sheep. I just wanted to trade places with God at that point. And so for you, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what you're chasing. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's status. Maybe you're finding your identity in a relationship. I think if all of us in the room were honest this morning, no matter how far you are in your own journey with the Lord, there's probably some things that if we were honest, that kind of ring our bell. That every morning when we wake up, we feel it. We sense it. And so the more that I chase freedom outside of God, the less that I felt like it was just running away from me. So the question we got to ask is, okay, so if you can't find freedom in things and status and relationship and money, then where do we get it? Where can we actually find freedom? So I want to invite us into verse 9. Jesus reveals the answer here. He says, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. So what Jesus is saying is freedom cannot actually be found in purses, places, people, or things. It can't be done. Freedom can only be found in Jesus. And so in this context, what would have happened is there would have actually been a gatekeeper here. And so if you put the picture on the screen one more time, this one kind of bewildered me. I'm going to be honest. This is not. I'm going to take the serious moment, set it aside, and just explain a little bit of my study. So I'm looking at that, and if you notice, there's no door on that sheepfold. And so as I'm studying it, I came to this conclusion of why in the world didn't they put a door on that thing? And it would be equivalent to me, building a house and then not having a door intentionally, having company come over and ask, why don't you have a door? And me saying, I didn't feel like you needed it. Didn't feel like we needed it. It's like I couldn't find any reason for why they didn't have a door other than one thing. And there would have been what's called a gatekeeper, and basically the gatekeeper would have actually laid down in front of the sheepfold, so that way when the sheep are in there, if any predators came to get it, that gatekeeper would lay its life down for its sheep. And what was important is it was always its own shepherd. They wouldn't have a different shepherd watching somebody else's sheep, because the second harm comes, the hired hand, he's running. But the sheep shepherd, he's going to lay down. He's going to lay down, and he's not moving. There was a nickname for Harriet Tubman, and it was Moses, because like Moses, she helped free people from captivity. But I'll tell you this, the greatest thing that Harriet Tubman and Moses did was not free people from slavery. It was they came to the reality themselves that without God, there was nothing they could do to be free. Harriet Tubman was a Christian well before she escaped. So she was free way before she ever left. The most important thing that they did was yield to God. Harriet Tubman and Moses, they freed bodies, but Jesus frees souls. They couldn't do what Jesus does. And he's saying, I'm the gatekeeper. Come to me. And when we look at what this costs God, literally God, he is and totally sufficient. He didn't need anything. He didn't need to do anything. But out of his loving kindness, he became a man. He totally emptied out himself of power and became the door for us. He literally became that for us. Jesus didn't discover freedom. He is freedom. That's the truth we get to sit with today. Harriet found it. Moses found it. Other people will try to look for it. But the reality is Jesus didn't have to discover it, man. He is freedom. And when we come to him, he actually shares that freedom with us. But he knows we're a little bit slow. He knows we need to be reminded. And so the text, the way that it happens is he's revealing himself, reminding us of the enemy, revealing himself. And one more time, he reminds us of the enemy again. In verse 9 here, verse 10, he says, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. So right now, he's reminding us that the Pharisees, that is their goal. is the sheep coming in to the door. Their one goal is to steal, kill, and destroy that path. The Pharisees didn't have a religious practice problem. They had a heart problem. They knew what to do. They knew how to do it. They knew when to pray, but they didn't know why to pray. They had everything but the main thing, and that was Jesus. And the biggest lie that they wanted them to believe, and anyone else that would be like a false teacher today, is that you can discover power and freedom on your own. That there's a different way. That you can go around that door into the sheepfold and have everything you've ever wanted. That's the lie that they were portraying. And if I'm honest with you, I can totally relate to that. And I've had many, many times where I was looking in the wrong places. Being a devout Christian in one area and just loving God, but then slowly just feeling my mind slipping or my heart slipping and trying to find some level of security outside of who God was. If I'm honest with you, I can relate to the Pharisees. And so what I want to invite us into today is if you have a heart problem, if you have a brokenness inside of you, that God wants to prescribe healing to that. That he actually is the way, the truth, and the life. And when we come to him, he wants to restore some of those pieces of our heart that, if we're really honest with ourselves, probably exist in us. And the reality is he's inviting us to come into that door, to actually come to him. There is no door. He is the door. He didn't discover freedom. He is freedom. And what he's doing is he's inviting only sheep into that door. Only sheep are allowed through the door. And if we remember earlier, what marks the sheep is that they listened only to God and no one else. The sheep listen only to God and no one else. So verse 10, it ends this way: I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Jesus laid his life down, just like the gatekeeper, just like the good shepherd. Jesus literally laid his life down so you could walk through this door. Easter's coming up, and everything we're anticipating is death, is resurrection. All of that was for this. He literally became the door. He is freedom, and he wants us to walk into that and share that freedom with him. And nobody in this room's above that freedom. And I anticipate that we're hungry for it.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope it made an impact on your life somehow. And if it did, don't forget to like or subscribe or share it on social media with your friends as well. We always love seeing you, and remember that you can join us live every single Sunday. So hope to see you there.